Hey there, this is Brent Harris again. Welcome back to my living room. This is what it looks like at around nighttime. Usually I shoot in the morning, but this was a special case today. I don't expect this to be drawn out too long. I just wanted to make a video for you on the subject of will and willpower. And it occurred to me last night. This was sort of the answer to a question that I've been asking for a little while. Because for myself this year, 2017, which is rapidly coming to a close, I made it all about the year of will for myself. Like very deliberately, I went into it with this theme of, well, I want to get on top of my exercise. I want to get on top of health, and I want to get on top of my money, career, and entrepreneurial situation. And so I really went for it. I really pulled at all the stops, applied every good technique and idea, every discipline, every style of self-discipline that I could think of, with a great amount of success in some ways, and with not any success in other ways. And it's been a very interesting experiment, because I went into it with this belief that elbow grease can take me all the way there, in the sense that if I just when it comes down to it, try my best, try my hardest, give it everything I have, apply every technique, and if I ever find any spare reserves of energy, or if it ever occurs to me that there's something that else I could be doing, then I should be doing that too. And as long as I remain faithful to that sort of approach, then I should be able to get what I want. If this sounds strangely Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich-esque, it is, because if you haven't heard of this book before, it's an old school book on success, and it was very much about elbow grease, but also about like belief and so forth. And anyways, I learned that it was not the case, or at least not the case for me, around this year. That in the sense that if I got all of if the amount of results that I received corresponded to the amount of effort and energy that I expended towards it, then I would just have 100 times more, between 50 and 100 times more. And so this really got me thinking about will and willpower, and the extent to which we have the ability to direct the course of our lives, and the extent to which we have the ability to get what we want. And here's what I found. I found that pretty much all of us are born into a world, and we're kind of schooled in a way that we learn about limitations, and there's a great emphasis on limitations. And typically as kids, we learn limitations from well-meaning parents and teachers and peer groups and so forth, and they say that hey, you're not able, you're not good at this, or you're not good at that, and we tend to be so impressionable that we take these ideas of limitations these ideas of who we are not, what we're capable of and what we're not capable of, and we really, really internalize it to the point where it just becomes like plain straight up fact, and our lives will reflect it in some way or another. And so then our job, so we go about our lives, a lot of us, we just go about our lives keeping these limitations in place all the way through. And if we're fortunate, then we learn that we can actually work with our beliefs, and we learn that that our beliefs really shape our reality. And so I kind of roughly divide this into three phases of human development, or three phases of the development of the will. So phase one, the first phase, is we accept and believe in our limitations, and we believe that our will does not ultimately influence our reality. In other words, we believe that our limitations and our personal reality is absolutely true, independent of our beliefs, and so therefore the best we can do is set up camp within them and just do our best, towards that ceiling. So that's phase one. And then usually what happens is we enter into phase two, where we might come upon some literature such as that book I referenced, Think and Grow Rich, which is all about you can have whatever you want and just dream it, do it, become it, like this type of language. Also, The Secret comes into mind, and every study of law of attraction and Abraham Hicks and this type of thought, where from moving from phase one to phase two is we realize that beliefs to a great extent are held and maintained in our own minds and have no reality outside of our minds. And if we make a study of working with and discovering our limiting beliefs, either on our own or having a friend or a professional look at it and help us out, then we can discard these beliefs and enjoy that greater expanded reality. But so this is kind of the phase that I have lived in for a very long time. And what I found, though, is that even this sort of thought seems to have a sort of upward cap, where all of us, if we're being really honest, the law of attraction and The Secret and everything that we learn from self-help and self-motivation and this kind of area of literature and thought, is that it seems to work for us some of the time in some ways, and despite all of our efforts, it tends just to not work in other ways, or we can only get kind of half of the way there. And so what I think is the case, or what I think is the reason, is that when we move into phase three is about discerning between our two different wills, the will of the ego and the will of the universe, the will of the divine. In phase one, we start off with, my will counts for nothing. Phase two is my will counts for everything, and I can have whatever I want. And then phase three is sort of this kind of interesting incorporation of phases one and two, because it seems that all of our will that we apply towards ego-based goals or ego-based outcomes, they tend not to pan out. Typically, we cannot actually manifest those goals, and if we do, it's after a colossal effort, and the results are short-lived, and they tend not to be permanent. And this might be for a couple different reasons. One of the main ones is that the ego itself, even if it achieves one of its goals, it tends to remain in a state of dissatisfaction. We realize that every time we achieve a goal, there's this brief respite from that sense of struggling and hankering and wanting and working. But the ego, on some level, knows that it can't survive in a state of satisfaction. The ego is really fueled and powered by a sense of struggle and work and effort and toil. So you get a goal, and then there's like that relaxation period, and then it's the next goal. And it's not even a nice way. It's kind of like the ego really is convinced that if it can get what it wants, then everything will be fine. But then when and if it gets what it wants, then the ego goes through this thought process of, this wasn't it. This wasn't actually the thing that I needed. The thing that I actually need is the next thing. And then it gets the next thing, and that turns out not to be it, and it goes on and on and on. And all the while staying in the state of striving. So those would be desires and the application of will from the ego standpoint. So there's the application of will from the point of view of the divine. And if you haven't seen my previous video, I really recommend it, because I go into a bit of a conversation on how to discover who you are outside of your sense of identity and outside of your sense of ego. And I guess the main conclusion, the spoiler, is that when you are able to relax your sense of ego, and when you're able to realize that your ego is only ego and not necessarily what you are, and if you discover that, like, you just keep pulling off layers of identity and layers of identity, you discover that you are very much just empty awareness, which can also be which is also what we call the divine, just that empty, silent presence that is awake in that which knows. It's the field of awareness. And every single person, and yourself and myself, we are all extensions of that field of awareness into physical form. And as an extension of what we are, we're humans and we're people and we have personalities, and we also carry within us certain longings or desires or yearnings. But they're different from ego-based longings and desires, because from the place of the field of awareness, it's about stuff that we long to do, not so much that we long to get. So it's a little bit of a generalization, because the awareness wants to receive as well. But whereas the ego wants to get, it wants to get so that it can become bigger, so that it can strengthen its sense of self, so that it can differentiate itself from other egos, so that it can offset or delay death, or somehow permanently delay it, if it can just figure out how, or find some aspect of it that can live on forever. The ego is constantly focused on preventing or offsetting its own death, or expanding to be bigger and bigger. But from the point of view of awareness, it wants to be immersed in a sense of play with other forms that are also extensions of awareness, so that this field of awareness can interact with itself and just enjoy the play. And so there's a desire for giving and receiving. And there's a great, great, great desire for creation. And it can be any sort of creation. It can be music, art, literature. It can be building a house. And it can also be just like going on a hike, going for a walk, and just drinking it in and just being able to see everything. So I use the word creation loosely, just like to be able to participate and generate and recombine and just be a part of all of it. So the universe, it seems, this is where we're getting into, this is my personal theory, so you test the theory and let me know as well, and we'll figure it out. But it seems that the universe just tends not to support the will of the ego. And so when we apply The Secret, the law of attraction, self-help, any of this kind of thought to an ego-based goal, then you just get effort and striving and kind of lukewarm results. But if you align it with the will of awareness, with the will of God, which is what you are, an extension of God, then the universe tends to line up with you. And what's cool about this is that it's very easy. It's not mysterious at all to know what God's will is, because it is your will. But it comes from a place outside of your mind, and it comes in the form of a sort of a silent interest or a curiosity, or it comes at the answer to a question such as, what's something that I would just love to do? What would feel great right now? What would be something interesting to make? What would I get a big kick out of doing right now? what would promote the greatest wellness in me? That's kind of a good one too. And you'll know if you get the answer back, you can check it against this question, which is, am I doing this? Am I doing this for the result that I will get from it? Or am I doing this because I want to do it? It's okay if you expect it to be successful or to give you something, that's fine. But as long as the majority, as long as 51% is doing it just for the joy of doing it, then this sort of action produces the state of flow, psychological flow, emotional flow, creative flow. And you'll notice too that the universe just starts to the gears start to work with you. The wind starts to blow at your back, so to speak. You get the synchronicities and the miracles, and things just tend to work out for you because you are in this state of creation and this state of flow, and you're not delaying your sense of gratification or satisfaction for a future moment when something's done or when you get something. So, oh yeah, and the last bit is that typically when you ask, what is God's will right now? Which again is to say, what would be just something amazing that I would love to do? What would I do if I were totally free? That's another one. What would I do if I were free of fear? What would I do if I were 100% fearless, just like a child? Typically, the answer to that question will take you outside of your comfort zone. It's safe. It's strangely safe to chase an ego-based desire. Because the ego always has a plan or a strategy to get you to arrive at a future point where you're safe and secure and everything's okay, and then you'll be allowed to be okay. That's always what the ego is telling us. It has 10 steps, and then when you get to the 10th step, then everything will be all right. But with your creative will, with God's will, you'll almost always find yourself stepping outside of your comfort zone. You have to, even if it doesn't look scary objectively, there will be some sort of fear involved. There will be an expansion of the circle of comfort. But if you do it, it will circulate new energy in. And you'll likely find that's what you've been waiting for. You've just been waiting to circulate new energy in. And then just follow it. Just tune into the energy and just follow it. So, phase 1, my will doesn't count for anything. I'm powerless. Phase 2, I'm powerful and I can do anything. Phase 3, my ego is powerless. And the divine sense of awareness, the field of awareness, is all powerful. And so therefore you can trust it and act on it. You didn't come all this way to play it safe. You haven't been through everything that you've been through. You haven't experienced everything that you've experienced. You haven't gone through everything that brought you to this point just to play it safe. What is something bold that you can do to circulate some new energy? I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.